Every time that we take a step away from listening to Das Torah, we pay a heavy price. This goes on us as human beings, parents, and it goes on the community. Chazon Ish was asked, how should we deal with those who go off the derech? And he gave hadracha. Rav Pam Zatzal was asked how to deal with kids off the derech, and he gave hadracha. And I have hundreds and hundreds of people who were asked, and I have thousands of stories. The Divrei Yoel, Lubavitch Rebbe, wherever you're from, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, all the Gedolim Tzadikim said, B'peh malei, only ahava, only love. Reb Gershni Edelstein Shlita Zayin Gesund, Rashka Bahag, the head of the literature world, connection to Chazon Ish, he said clearly, he wrote clearly, besides the video that he did with me, he wrote down clearly, Yeled sheniskalkel tzrichim linhoig imoi bekavoid v'yedidus. And when we don't listen, we pay a price. If we would listen, we wouldn't have kids hurting themselves, kids in psych wards, we wouldn't have kids on the street feeling homeless. Our kids would come back, we wouldn't have gangs on the street, gangs of kids who feel rejected because people are looking at them without kavod, without yedidus. When we go against Das Torah, we pay a hefty price. And the longer it's going to go on, Rachmana litzlan, in America, in ARTSCROLL, creating enemies. We're creating enemies. All of these organizations that were created by people who went off the derech and were rejected, were not treated with the medicine of Das Torah, they're coming down to get us. They're trying to pull down our education, and then people fight them again. So you go again with the same trouble, the same treatment that got us into this problem. It gets worse. They go back to anger, back to fighting, but more anger, more fighting, creating a vicious cycle. Why can't we listen to Das Torah? Yinasu l'mashcham ba'avoisos ahava v'loy l'tchoisam chalila. 7 words of the Chazon Ish. Pull them in with ropes of love and don't reject them. And if each kid was getting from their parents and their brothers and their sisters and their aunts and their uncles and the community and the neighbor, there would be no violence. Period. End of story. We have 700 kids TP. They are not part of violence. They're not part of any of these organizations that are pulling down Klal Yisrael. How can it be? I take the worst cases. It's hard to get in here, right? Take the most difficult cases. We take kids who are atheists. We take kids who hate Yiddishkeit with a passion. We take kids who burned tefillin, a kid burnt chumash, a kid she ripped off the mezuzah and cut it in pieces. We had a kid who told his mother, I want to kill myself so that there will be one less beeping Jew in the world. Hitler didn't finish the job. So many of our kids said that. Jews are the worst, frum people, rabbis are molesters, haters, they hate us. And 700, look at us a few years later, all of those that were in those organizations left. Why? Because we're doing the medicine and people question us. We don't have haters. Our kids are not haters. When there was a movie against Klal Yisrael, our kids were not a part of it. And when it came out, a lot of TP parents told their kid, oh, this movie came out, let's watch it together. Very gutsy. And they had a lot of rhetoric against the community, and our kids not only didn't enjoy it, several of them told the parents, I don't want to watch this. And a lot of the kids defended us. No, they're not all bad, they're not all molesters, don't say everybody's bad, because my parents are wonderful, and Yiddishkeit is beautiful, because Yiddishkeit teaches us to accept everybody and to love everybody. Al tadin es chavercha ad shetegilim kaimai. Havedon es kol ha'adam l'kav zchus. But when we abandon our principles, we don't live with the Yud Midas Harachamim, and we have anger shooting out of our eyes, not only are we going to lose individuals, but they're going to gang up on us. And then they said in this community, Gesundheit, they said in this community, we're scared for our children to go outside. Yet, this was created by bad advice. I have proof. Our kids are not part of that. None of our TP kids are part of any gangs or part of any groups that are against anti-religion after whatever the treatment method takes. Sometimes right away, sometimes if you did bad stuff for a couple of years, it takes some time to unwind it, and that's it. All these kids, say hundreds of kids, and they're angry at us because everybody's looking down at them. Most of them we know went through child abuse and trauma and sexual abuse and all issues, but that doesn't matter. I mean, why is that not enough to make us have mercy on them? But forget about why. Let's say, like one guy said, the Bali Taiva, people just don't know. Fine. But the Chazon Ish said what to do. But all the Gedolim said what to do. That's why I'm putting together this book. I have over 6,000 stories, authentic stories. The Divrei Yael said what to do. Like, where are you from? Why is our first response not following the gold standard of listening to Das Torah? And then they hate these kids and they say things and they look down at them in the name of Hashem. Such a chil Hashem. Because you want to do something against Das Torah, you want to do a sin, do it in the name of the Yetzer Hara. Over here they do it in the name of God. They make the kid feel, I look down at you in the name of Hashem. And Hashem is saying, where did you get this from? Because there's like 1,000 Chazal that say not to do that. There's thousands of stories. Rabbi Yashiv said not to do that. Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal said not to do that. Rabbi Steinman Zatzal said not to do that. In the Chassidische Welt, show me one story that says that when you see somebody off the derech, you should yell at them and scream at them. Rabbi Aaron Schechter, Sheshiva of Chaim Berlin, was walking Friday night with a few chevra, and he saw ahead boys who were smoking on Shabbos. And he didn't want these guys to say anything wrong. I don't know why they would say anything in front of their shiva. You're not allowed to even do that. But that's gone, right? All of that covered. He said, stay behind me. And when he walked by, you know what he told them? He said, boys, I love you. If you ever need anything, my door is always open to you. That's what the Gedolim do. Show me one Gadol that doesn't do that. Show me one Gadol. Ramosha Feinstein, Zatzal. Is he good enough for everybody here? He used to go every day to shul, and he passed a barber. And every morning he went in, and he said, good morning. Shabbos, the guy was open. And Ramosha Feinstein went in and said, good morning, with a smile. After a few months, the guy had a sign on, this thing, closed Shabbat and Yontif. Ramosha met him walking in the street, and he said, what happened? He said, because you greeted me with a smile, and you didn't chastise me, you didn't give me musar, and yell at me, and put me down, I decided I'm closed on Shabbos and Yontif. Ma'aseh shahoya kachoya. There's 1,000 stories like that. We have hadracha from everyone. From everyone. Like, I'm not even going to mention Lubavitch, because everybody's like, oh, Lubavitch, of course they love Jews. Like, that's your whole business. You stop loving Jews, you're out of business. But the story of the Rayats, the story of, we're not. Where does it say, look down at another Jew and be merachik him because you don't understand, or they should know better, or they're evil, or they have, let's say you have a big Yetzer Hara. How do you win them over? It's the same medicine. And every time that we take a step against a Jew, a neshama, we not only are over lifnei iver l'sitin michshel. I didn't say that. Gershon Edelstein said that. The Pele Yoyed said that 250 years ago. It's merachik them. It causes more sin. It causes more longer amounts of sin until they do tshuva. But besides for that, we're destroying our own communities. We're creating gangs of teens. There's too many of them. And it's so easy to fix. The problem could be fixed mamish like that. If everybody in the community, instead of thinking about how to get the security and to fight them and we should make a war, first of all, you never ever fight with a teenager because they got nothing to lose. You're going to be thinking twice before you do something. They are not thinking at all. And they're high on who knows what. So first of all, fighting is a big mistake. There was a meeting about closing the park on 18th Avenue in Borough Park. Some Rabbanim came together. And then one of the Rabbanim stood up and said, Hashem wants us to be makar of all of these kids. Hashem did us a favor. He gave us 18th Avenue Park. So we know where they all are. He gathered them for us. So Friday night, why don't we just all go to the park and do our job and be makar of them? Why don't we do that? No, we've shut down the park, disperse them. It's going to be much harder to find them. The Zohar Kodesh says you have to run after the sinners and bring them back to Hashem. And he promises you money and nachas, Yiddish nachas. It's the best defense for our kids. He tells us what to do. We don't have to run after them. They're gathered here. We don't want them in Manhattan. So Baruch Hashem, they didn't close that. And then they went ahead and they had a march in a certain place against them, singing Adir B'Amarim Hashem. Like, you think a kid's going to do tshuva from that? People are making up stuff. Like, why make up stuff? We have the medicine that works. We have medicine given to us generations. Baal Shem Tov said, Lehoiv oisam b'yoser. Love them more. Why is it so hard? Because small-minded people. But if they're going to love them more, why should they ever get better? Okay, that's a question on all the Das Torah that said to love them more. Reb Shimshon Pincus said what to do. Who not? And they just go on their own like vigilantes, and they are merachik their children, and they teach and preach hatred. And then these kids that are left for dead and feel like they're stuck in a world like mamish, like they're surrounded by people who look down at them. And we know, once you do this 20 years, we know from all of those who survive and get out of this, they're the sweetest kids. We need them in part of Klal Yisrael. We need them. They're the sweetest kids. They were hurt. They were hurt, especially in this area that has so much violence. There's such a high rate of molestation of children. And it's Yedua. And instead of dealing with the problem, and those who did the deeds, the terrible deeds that hurt these kids, they're tzaddikim. They're fine. We don't have a problem with them. People know who they are. No, they get to roam free. And these kids who are victims, not only they're victims, when they act out, instead of following the medicine, the treatment medicine that was given to us by all of the Gedolim, there's like not one gadol. I would love someone to write a book against my book. I have 6,000 stories. Let him write a book of stories that they went to this and this Rebbe, and he said, if someone is Machal Shabbos, you got to kick him in the face and throw him out, and don't let him into your house, and don't let him in. Where? Which gadol was it? And if there is, okay, so we have 99%, so that's also enough. But every time we don't follow Das Torah, authentic Das Torah, not hotheads, not we got to get the garbage out of this town and small-minded people. We have Gedolim for this. Every time that we don't do that, we lose out. And over time, it's snowballing, and they're creating a lot of trouble for us. And our Averis are snowballing. Our mistreatment of the situation by hotheads and by small-minded people. And I think it's just so sad. This whole thing is a misunderstanding. Put the people who know how to deal with this in charge, and the problem will go away. All right, we have a lot to daven for. We have to daven for Klal Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. What's going on? Hundreds of homeless kids. There was a TP parent in Eretz Yisrael, and she passed by, and this kid was like 14 years old. He was thrown out of his home. He asked for food. She bought him a falafel, and she schmoozed with him. He was thrown out of his home because he has an iPhone. Okay? Which is a terrible thing, and he's not from, obviously, all of that. And he was thrown out of home. Who says to throw your kid out of home? Which Das Torah? Who told you to do it? The little ones, not the big ones. I asked her Begarshin, and you saw the video. Absolutely not. Chas v'shalom, chas v'shalom. But besides that, I feel bad for this kid. Feel bad for the parents because they want to have nachas from their kid, and they're causing the problem. They're overlifting the iver. They don't even realize it, and they get advice from people, and they pay money for this advice. It's not the Jewish way. It doesn't work. This kid could be frum in 2 years from now, and instead they throw him out. They lose him forever. And now there's hundreds of them. They can make gangs. They start breaking cars, breaking into cars, bashing stuff. They come in as a gang into a restaurant. We're creating our own enemies. Mamish creating our own enemies. And if you look ahead, chas v'shalom, if these people don't change and they don't follow Das Torah, and if the Das Torah of these places don't take leadership and say, this is wrong, we don't do this, this is how, and bring in people to teach people how to do it successfully, it's so unnecessary. If this continues in a couple of years from now, Rahman al-Litzlan, what's going to happen? You're going to mamish have violence. You're mamish going to have Rahman al-Litzlan gangs who are going to just be dangerous, and they're all going to be, it's poison. You take sweet kids and feed them hatred, and feed them looking down at them, and feed them with poison that you're not good enough. And they're nebuch sweet tzebrachen, broken souls who need kiruv. That's our job. It's like the whole point of our dar. It's so clear. Nesiv Shalom Schusyagan Aleinu says, just like Chanoich L'nar al pi darkoi, every child you have to educate according to his own individual way, so to Chanoich L'dar al pi darkoi. Every dar has its own chanoch, and every dar has its own mitzvah. And there's no question that it's our mitzvah is to save our youth, because it didn't happen 30 years ago. That's what they say. How do you know what the mitzvah of the dar is? There was a certain time that the mitzvah was tzitzis. Where was that? By Rabbi Yitzchak? Where the mitzvah was tzitzis. By when? Yeah? Well, I got it right. And every dar has its own mitzvah. Our mitzvah is to save our children who get poisoned by this snake bite with venom in it and causes them to have breakdowns. And our job is to be makarev them. And that's why it's not a mistake or an accident or a coincidence that it says that the words that Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come when Mashiach comes is going to be v'heishiv le'avos halbanim v'le'banim al avosim. This is exactly what we need. And it says le'avos first. First v'heishiv le'avos halbanim, and then v'le'banim al avosim. And it's automatic. Kamayam apanim l'panim kein le'vadim la'adam. If all the parents would be v'heishiv le'avos halbanim, then the banim are forced, le'banim al avosim. We see it here, ki yadua l'yoydei kip. It's so pashut. So many of you did it. You see it. And then there's no violence, and they don't want to be a part of those people, and they turn their back on those. That's why unfortunately, a lot of our kids don't have friends. A lot of our kids who are recovering don't have friends because they don't have frum friends yet, right? And then they don't want to be with the kids on the street because they're not street kids. Your kids are not homeless. Your kids are not emotionally orphaned. Your kids are welcome at home with open arms, and they're living at home, and they have a mommy and a daddy that are there for them, to love them and to accept them and to love and to cherish. That's the whole point. And even though they're not behaving properly, that's when you need to listen to what the prescription is from the Gedalim. Hashem should watch over us. I'm very, very scared about what's coming.